Welcome everyone to Deep Waters here on ProBox TV, taking a deep dive into all things boxing. Well, the biggest subject this week in boxing, Oleksandr Usyk, of course, overcoming Tyson Fury, back and forth fight, knocking down the much bigger fighter to become the undisputed heavyweight champion, first time in 2.5 decades. So what debate has that started that we will settle today? That's right, the pound for pound debate. And I have the men to do it. Paulie Malignaggi, Chris Algieri, ESPN boxing analyst, of course, the Desert Storm, Tim Bradley joining us as well. Gentlemen, when you look at this, Usyk, of course, launched himself to the top of the debate. Now, another thing that helps us out on X, Terrence Crawford himself said, quote, "Y'all better put some respect on Usyk. He's definitely a candidate for #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world. I'm no hater. He beat the man that beat the man in a bigger division, given what he's already done. Salute, brother." You talk about the division. The question here is we're hesitant to give a heavyweight the pound-for-pound title. Why? Lighter fighters just need to do more. They have to have more skills, do more things. Him coming up from a lighter division, does that help in the debate? Paulie, curious about that?
Well, here's the thing, Jimmy. Initially, when the pound-for-pound debate was first started, it was because everybody can't fight each other because you have weight classes. So the initial debate used to be, if everybody was the same weight, who would beat who, right? And so that's what pound-for-pound was supposed to be. But then, of course, through the years, it evolves. Is your resume, who did you beat, how you beat them, and all this other stuff. And then, well, it can't be a heavyweight because that's the whole reason pound-for-pound was made, is because guys aren't big enough to fight heavyweights, so it can't be a heavyweight. Well, you know what, guys? I can remember the old Ring magazines, and Mike Tyson was on the pound-for-pound list back in the pre-1990. So you know what? This guy can be on the pound-for-pound list. Now, the debate is who's #1, because honestly, the top three have separated themselves from the rest. I mean, this has become obvious now. In a way, Crawford and Usyk have really separated themselves. And it's almost like it keeps flipping around after each guy's performance. They're competing against each other. Every time they fight, it's like, oh, wow, another brilliant performance. Does he move ahead of the other two guys? Maybe he does. Okay. And then one of the other two guys fight on the top three. Oh, man, he looks great. Oh, we got to move him up again. You know, so this is the latest debate right here, guys. I mean, this is the latest debate. Usyk wins over Tyson Fury in a fight where he was also the underdog, cementing his status both as the best heavyweight on the planet, and now, because he won, despite being the top 3 pound for pound, he still went into this fight as an underdog. How often do you get a top 3 pound-for-pound guy that goes into a fight as an underdog, and yet Usyk still won the fight? So, you know what, guys? I mean, he's got a big, big case for the top spot.
Yeah, listen, just because you're a heavyweight doesn't mean you can't be a pound-for-pound. I mean, Tyson Fury's been a pound-for-pound for a while. Usyk's been there for a while. Again,
Vladimir Klitschko was on that list.
Yeah,
he had
of course.
11 years.
So I think that's kind of a misnomer. They're saying, oh, heavyweights are not normally a pound-for-pound. I mean, they're not. I think a lot of times you look at that because of the size, right? Because you can be so much bigger than your opponents. A lot of times you can use those physical assets to overpower someone else's skill set. But Usyk's not that guy. He's got the skills to pay the bills, man. This guy, he's smaller, he fights heavier guys, and I would actually argue that he should go up spots at being a heavyweight because it only takes one punch.
Well, I put him at #1, absolutely. I mean, what he was able to accomplish that night, it was a fantastic fight, great performance. And you had Tyson Fury, who had all the advantages, you know, had the experience in the heavyweight department, had the height, had the reach, all the attributes he brings inside the ring. And Usyk was able to overcome all of that, man. It was just part of his game plan. It was the commitment that he had early on with the body. It's the fact that he fights at a high revenue pace, and Fury couldn't keep up with it. I thought Fury was going to have that gas tank needed to be able to keep up with him, but he didn't. Usyk finding that shot, actually standing still and actually trading with Tyson Fury and catching him in that sequence, man, where you hurt him against the ropes, I believe in the 9th round. And just the follow-up shots as well. Everybody's giving the referee a hard time about, the knockdown. That should have been a knockdown. It should have been a knockdown. But just understand this. Usyk hit this man 20 times unanswered. 20 times unanswered. Now, if the referee would have called that knockdown the first knockdown when he went against the ropes, then the fight could have probably been stopped or not. It would have gave Fury a chance to relax. But he hit him with 20 unanswered punches, during that entire sequence. So, I mean, I don't have a problem with what the referee did at the end of the day. However, I love Terrence Crawford. He brings a ton of skill into the ring, but he's been extremely inactive. I love Inoue as well. He's done some phenomenal things in the lower weight classes, but this right here, man, becoming undisputed at cruiserweight and going up to the heavyweight and facing a guy that haven't been beaten in over, I don't even know how many years, man. You guys can do the math. You guys are smart out there. And Tyson Fury, who I highly, truly believe is a great heavyweight champion. or was the great heavyweight champion, it's unbelievable, man. And nothing that Terrence Crawford has done in his career, or nothing that Inoue has done in his career, is greater than what Usyk has accomplished on Saturday night.
Paulie, let's talk about something that we were talking about before we got on air, because all we do is discuss boxing here. This idea that had it been reversed, much like Drago Rocky, Balboa Rocky on your hat there.
Wearing this in honor of great heavyweight fights.
In honor of greatness.
In honor of terrific heavyweight fights in history.
If it had been reversed, if Fury had thrown all those unanswered shots at Usyk, do you think that fight gets stopped?
Yeah, you know what? David Haye actually mentioned this. He said if that's Usyk, that fight gets stopped. Possibly, but it doesn't mean it's the right decision.
Right.
You know, it's just there's more emotion there because the bigger guy is planting you onto the ropes and hitting you with those unanswered punches, and the optics of it might look worse. But honestly, it doesn't mean it would have been the right decision. Also, a couple of things I'm going to keep in mind. Tyson Fury has this reputation for, not going away even when you think he's going away. Keep in mind the first Deontay Wilder fight where he looks like he's gone and instead he gets up and he beats that count. So you have that situation. And so certain guys get refereed different. Round 9 of Gotti versus Ward, probably any other two guys, that fight gets stopped. But it's Gotti and Ward. They have a reputation going into the fight. So these kind of guys, they have a little bit of reputation. Tyson Fury has a reputation for not being able to go away so easily. Also, the importance and the magnitude of the fight. You don't stop that fight. Plus, the rule is if the ropes hold you up, it's a knockdown, not a knockout. Just because a lot of referees, in the emotion of the moment, make the wrong call and stop those fights doesn't mean that Mark Nelson now should be criticized for actually setting the correct precedent. He set the correct precedent. This is what Mark Nelson did is what you are supposed to do. Why are we criticizing Mark Nelson, who did what other referees, who corrected what other referees have done wrong? Why are we saying other referees have stopped it in that situation? They're the ones that are wrong, guys.
They're wrong. Yeah.
They're the ones that are wrong. Mark Nelson did the right thing by not stopping the fight and counting Tyson Fury. Having said that, there's one more intangible you got to keep in mind. In the Middle East, the crowds are not the same. I love what Turki Al-Ashik is doing, bringing these terrific fights to boxing. But I would love if Turki Al-Ashik would understand that for the optics and the atmosphere, the fight climate of these major fights, if you put them in the UK or you put them in England, they would be unbelievable. There will be an unbelievable atmosphere that you just cannot get in Saudi Arabia. Regardless of how amazing it is, and I thank Turki Al-Ashik for making these fights because you have terrific fights. You had a card that had several upsets. These are the fights you want in boxing, and I'm very grateful that we got somebody making these fights. It would be more unbelievable if you had an incredible atmosphere where to put these fights. Now, having said that, why am I saying that? Because the atmosphere of the moment, in that moment, if Fury's going down and Usyk is going for the finish, the crowd in a different arena is going to be so hyper, so electric. The decibel level is going to go so high that the emotion of the moment may influence the referee to stop the fight. It doesn't mean it will be the right call, but it's all of a sudden you're caught up in the emotion of the moment. Possibly the fact that it wasn't the emotion of the moment because the crowd is not as crazy as it would have been in Las Vegas or in Wembley. You know what? Maybe Mark Nelson, it helped Mark Nelson make the correct call. Yeah.
Big crowd again. Once again, Drago, Balboa, huge crowd. Check it out, Rocky IV. Anyway, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, the future for both men after a Titanic clash last Saturday. We break it down when we come back. Welcome back into Deep Waters. We're taking a deep dive into, of course, Usyk versus Fury, a fight that will live forever in boxing lore. The question is, what comes next? ESPN boxing analyst Timothy Bradley joining us via Zoom. I got to ask you first. Of course, we have the rematch. Nothing can screw that up. That's the next step because everything makes sense in boxing, right, Tim?
It does make sense in boxing. I mean, I think that this fight does deserve a rematch. I was thinking beforehand that sometimes you have this energy surrounding this fight, right? And it doesn't always live up to the hype, but I feel like this fight actually deserves a rematch because if you talk to some experts and some guys that were actually there live, Antonio Tarver included, man, and Tarver said like he thought that Fury might have pulled it off.
Yeah, I've heard some people thought that too. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that said this fight was that close. It was a draw. I've seen draws. I've seen Fury. I've seen Usyk. The Usyk fans, the ones that betted for Usyk, of course, they're going to scream loud and proud and say, hey, I picked him. He won the fight. But the fight was that damn close. And I'm looking forward to the rematch. I'm just thinking about, these guys are resting right now, but I'm thinking about moving forward as far as the game plan goes. What's going to be next for Tyson Fury? I know what Usyk's going to bring. He's going to bring that same intensity. He's going to figure it out in there. He was able to make adjustments during the course of the fight. His discipline came through. His stamina came through. Again, he's the older fighter, but this is a guy that lives like a Spartan. And you can see how his character and how, living disciplinedly and doing the right things all the time, you can see how that helped him on the back end of the fight. Whereas Fury, being this 2 years younger, you can see him kind of fade out on that back end of the fight, man, when usually he's strong in this department. So I'm just curious what Fury's going to do the second time around, man. Is he going to put on weight and try to bully Usyk? Because when he stepped inside that pocket, you know, Usyk, he had a plan. He was pushing him off of him, you know, creating space for himself. He was tucking his elbows in, not allowing Fury to get around to his head and get around to tying up his arms. So I'm just wondering what the game plan is the second time around for Tyson Fury. And you already know, and everybody knows what Usyk is going to bring. I'm going to tell you right now, in the rematch, I'm going to pick Usyk. I think Usyk has his number. I think Usyk knows what he has to do now. I think he's smart enough. I think he knows his weakness. I think he continues to come forward. Think about this now. He bagged up the bigger man all night from the first round all the way to the end. Think about that.
That was a big difference, Tim. That was I felt like that's what caused the fatigue. It was the mental stress.
But the body shots didn't help. He was consistent with the body shots.
He got to put the physical work in for sure.
Round one. So Tim, you brought up a great point. How people are arguing that Fury could have won that fight, or how close the fight was. Listen, I was actually one of the guys last minute who picked Usyk because I've never seen Usyk lose. I just had a feeling. I was saying it for weeks leading up. I was like, man, I got a funny feeling. I was saying it on our shows, and I was like, I got a funny feeling. I was like, I wasn't going to pick him yet.
You said it at your house too when we were watching.
Yeah, and I'm watching the fight. But then in the middle of the fight, when Tyson was really looking good, I mean, he was looking great. He was looking phenomenal. He was looking athletic. That right uppercut that he was winging out of nowhere and getting closer and closer to landing and was actually rocking Usyk with a couple of shots on him. I'm like, man, this guy is looking really good. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he stops Usyk at this point. Yep. If Usyk doesn't hurt Fury, Fury wins that fight. Guys, I know we're looking at hindsight. We're like, oh, man, Usyk. Listen, he doesn't hurt him in the 8th round. He doesn't drop him in the 9th round. He loses the fight. Fury was in dominant control in those middle rounds. First 3 rounds, super close. Could have gone probably either way. I had Usyk winning a lot of those rounds. 4, 5, 6, 7, dominant Tyson Fury.
Dominant boxing.
Dominant boxing. Beautiful boxing IQ. Excellent performance, execution, everything. Usyk stayed dogged like he always does, stayed in his face, did what he had to do. Round 8 hurts him, pins him across the ropes. 9 drops him, comes back. Listen, I gave Fury the 12th round too. The guy came back and started boxing good. He had a snappy jab in the last round. I'm like, man, this guy still got it. I don't know what happens in a rematch.
Paulie, here's the question. Right? The odds have already been released. Obviously, preliminary odds. Right now, it is Usyk plus 200, Fury minus 160. So it shifted from a coin flip to, I'm sorry, other way around, of course. It is a gigantic favorite that was a coin flip fight. Now, Paulie, my question for you is, this reminds me a little bit of Tommy Hearns, Sugar Ray Leonard, and the boxer became the puncher, became the boxer. It's almost like they switched the traditional roles. We thought Hearns was the knockout puncher, and then he ends up getting hurt by Sugar Ray Leonard. Same kind of thing here. Usyk, to Chris's point, had to hurt Fury, even though we thought about his boxing, his lack of power. How do you get ready for a rematch?
Well, first of all, in great fights, that's what you tend to see. You tend to see the adjustments made back and forth, sometimes in the same fight, and sometimes even in rematches and whatnot. I mean, that was the beautiful thing about this fight, the roller coaster that it was, where the momentum swings kept going up and down, and then there was even a knockdown. You saw that in the fight you mentioned, Leonard versus Hearns 1. Honestly, I'll go back even a few years back to Golovkin and Canelo 2. Everybody talks about the Canelo adjustment, but I thought Golovkin also adjusted beautifully going back off that jab. You know, when there's great fighters, you match them up against each other. It really is a terrific,
it goes tit for tat. I always think of De La Hoya and Vargas, rounded to round. Adjust.
So you wonder now, what's the next adjustment? I mean, Fury going to have to make that adjustment. I thought Fury, when he used his jab in the early rounds, I think this is why some of the early rounds are a difference maker here in the coin flip decision, where some guys, I thought Usyk won the fight. I picked Fury to win the fight. I thought Usyk won the fight. When the fight was over, I said Usyk won. But then I see some, like you said, Tim, and you said, Chris, you know, there's some really the people whose boxing opinions I really respect, not just random blowhards that afterwards come in. I thought Fury won. I'm like, wow, that's interesting, you know, because you know these are people that whose opinion I respect if they give me. And Antonio's one of them. Tim, you mentioned Antonio Tarver. So I was like, you know, I was like, this fight was really, really close. And you made up a great point, Champ, Chris, you know, with the knockdown. Because it's not just about, if there's no knockdown, mathematically, if there's no knockdown, the fight's a draw. But also, momentum-wise, the momentum stays with Fury. So
it took Fury 3 rounds to get his legs back.
So probably there's 1 or 2 more rounds Fury ends up winning, so the decision tilts in his favor. Mathematically, it's a draw. But you got to also understand that knockdown also creates momentum for Usyk to win the following rounds after that. And so that momentum isn't built off that knockdown. So maybe Fury wins a round or 2 and he wins that fight.
Even with the knockdown, if he's not as hurt, Fury wins the fight.
Yeah.
It's because he hurt him. He was hurt.
And I need to make one more point.
The nose, too.
I need to make
we didn't mention the nose.
The nose,
nose got cracked.
that also hurt him with the
That's
fatigue.
a big
You're right,
deal.
speaking of the fatigue, that also hurt him. I'll make one more point. This is why you want to see 1 versus 2 in every weight class. This is why. I don't want to see 1 versus 4, 1 versus 5. We've seen Fury and Usyk beat the rest of them in the top 5, the top 10. This is why I can't stand when guys don't make fights. Hint, hint, Canelo Alvarez. 1 versus 2 is a fight you want. I don't want to see you 1 versus 5. Every time we make a 1 versus 5, 1 versus 4 solid fight, you already know who's going to win. You didn't know who was going to win this fight. You tried to pick him. You wound up with a great fight.
I still want to see Tyson Joshua.
After the rematch,
That's
all right?
not gonna happen. That ain't happening.
You see the odds in front of you. It is Usyk minus 200, Tyson Fury plus 160 in a hypothetical rematch that is a ways away. A question we have, because it's boxing, might not happen, is if we don't have it, what are the legacies of these two fighters should they never fight again? We'll tackle that when we come back. Welcome back into ProBox TV's Deep Waters, taking a deep dive into all things boxing. Now, we're diving into the legacy of Tyson Fury. Look, there are only 2 kinds of boxers on earth. You are untested, or you have a loss and you're a bum. That's it. The only 2 kinds we have in professional boxing. So, gentlemen, Tyson Fury, of course, losing for the first time in his career to Oleksandr Usyk in a great performance in a phenomenal fight. To a lot of fans, you tumble so far with that 1 loss. This was a very close fight. You said it over and over. Usyk doesn't hurt him, and it's at least a draw, if not a win for Fury. But his legacy now at this point, should we never see the rematch, where is it, Paulie?
For the brainiacs in the comment section, he was being sarcastic. There's brainiacs
But those are the people that say that, so I don't know if they're going to accept that.
Yeah.
Right,
So, it's a tough situation. I mean, because Fury, some of the criticism he's brought on himself in being inconsistent in the heavyweight division, taking breaks,
fighting down to the opposition.
Fighting down to the level of opposition. Still, for me, one of the best heavyweights ever, and one of the best fighters of this generation. But yeah, you end up with this kind of pressure. In an era where the top fighters only fight once or twice a year, we don't get a lot of chances to judge them. So every performance, especially at a high level, is so important, and you're really under a microscope. It's not what you want to sign up for, but it's what you sign up for. And it has its pros and cons. And one of the cons is that you're under a microscope each and every time because you don't fight very often in this era. And especially a guy like Fury, who's fought even less often because of random retirements and mental health issues that he had to take care of. So if you come back and then lay an egg every once in a while, it brings a lot of criticism. I'm not saying it's right. The pros are you make a lot of money and you win heavyweight championships and all that. So there's pros and cons to every situation. Of course, man. I mean, listen, he's got to win the rematch. I mean, it doesn't look great if he doesn't, but at the same time, that trilogy with Wilder is one for the books. You're gonna remember that one.
What are your thoughts on that? The legacy
and the Klitschko win. The Klitschko win's big, guys. I mean, Klitschko hadn't lost in 11 years.
Guys, it's what have you done for me lately? I know we're criticizing him because he just lost, but he has a historic heavyweight career, and he's one of the best heavyweights I've ever seen. He's one of the best heavyweights who's ever lived, literally. And listen, his career's not over. Even if this rematch doesn't materialize, he's still going to keep fighting. He has opportunities to fight some of the other big guys in this weight class. He goes out there and he beats up Ergovich and he beats Anthony Joshua. It's a loss on his record. Guess what? All the great heavyweights have losses. It doesn't change his legacy. Granted, it's not the same thing, but if he comes back and beats him in a rematch, then we got a whole nother trilogy to add to it, or another legacy builder to add to it. So I don't know. I don't think it hurts him that bad. I think we're just saying it because it's so close to the loss.
And the heavyweight division is so good. I don't know if he beats Ergovich or Joshua,
Correct.
but it's right there. Those fights are good. Those fights are great fights you want to see.
It's just hard to speak this soon.
Tim, a question I have for you is, because of his size, right? This guy's 6'9". Did he have to be perfect every single time? Is it easy for us to say, oh, he was just a big guy and overlook the boxing skills when it comes to legacy?
Forget about that, man. I mean, you can see the skills. I mean, Paulie alluded to it. He does have skills, and I think he's a guy that can compete in any area as well. He does. He's big. He can box, so on and so forth. But it's about resumes. That's what it's about. It's about resume, man. I've always been very critical of Fury in his resume and not fighting Joshua, not fighting the bigger names in the sport. Yes, he fought Wilder. He fought him 3 times. But Joshua fight, man, can you imagine him fighting Joshua? Back when Joshua was Joshua, that would have been great on his resume.
And also, Tim, he had an opportunity to fight Joshua when Joshua wasn't fighting so great. So he could have beat him then and said, now he got a momentum, Joshua. But go ahead, Tim.
That's all I'm saying, man. At the end of the day, his resume is very thin. Yes, he has the Klitschko win, but after that, I mean, he has the Wilder win. But what else does he have? I mean, there's not much meat on the bone right there, man. So it's a must win for Fury, man. And this is something that I've said to Fury, to his face. As I said, man, aren't you worried about your legacy? Aren't you worried about, fighting the best fighters out there in the heavyweight division, getting your resume up? And he was just like, oh, I'm not worried about any of the, Hall of Fame. I'm not worried about any of that stuff. And I'm like, all right, man, it is what it is. So now he's in a situation where you're like, if he don't win this fight, is he going to be considered one of the greatest heavyweights?
It's a legacy question. It's a legacy question that only time will answer. Another thing we need to talk about, of course, is Ukraine and their boxing staples they're sending to the United States. Some top pound-for-pound guys. What is the secret sauce? We discuss it right after this. Welcome back into Deep Waters here on ProBox TV, where we take a deep dive into all things boxing. Right now, that is Oleksandr Usyk, his incredible performance last Saturday, but Ukraine itself, I know under siege metaphorically and literally, have produced some incredible boxers. Question for my panel here is, what is the secret sauce? You know about Vasily Lomachenko. We talked about Usyk. Let's not forget Denis Berinchik pulling off a big upset over Navarrete for his lightweight title. What is the secret sauce? The technique coming out of Ukraine, absolutely stunning. Paulie, what's your thought on it?
There's been solid fighters out of Ukraine, but I think it's one particular generation that really stands out. Listen, there's even new generation. Bohachuk's a nice fighter to watch.
Fantastic.
There's been some good fighters, but that 2012 generation had Berinchik, it had Lomachenko, Usyk, Bozdik, Derevyanchenko, who also has been a solid contender through these years. I think it's one generation, that really stands out, and I feel like they should be appreciated for what they were.
Chris, you as a coach, that coaching, is it that next level coaching they get in the end?
Well, I think it's a combination. It's coaching, but it's also mentality. All of these guys show next level otherworldly toughness. I said that about Usyk in our post-fight show. I've seen the guy struggle in the amateurs. I've seen him struggle at cruiserweight. I've seen him struggle at heavyweight. But I've never seen him lose. I've always found a way to win. He has that underdog mentality no matter where he is in his life. And I think you see a lot of that in these guys. Their self-belief is always there. They fight for a higher power, and they understand if they're down, they can find a way to win.
Timothy, when you take a look at this, these are two guys in Lomachenko and Usyk who had long amateur careers, comparatively short pro careers. Is it that amateur foundation, those fundamentals that make them so great in the end?
It's the amateur background, the fundamentals, of course, but it's the fact that these fighters are hardened, their lifestyle, the way they brought up. I think America, we've gotten away from that. We've gotten lazy. We got participation trophies. They don't have that over there at all. Everything is earned. Everything is earned and given then. So I think it's the mindset, like Chris said. I also think it's the fact that we have gyms here. Guess what they have? They have boxing schools. They have ethics there as well. They have a belief system as well. They have values over there. All these things is what strengthens the character within the fighter. That's the reason why I believe they're having a ton of success.
Whenever you train with fighters in the gym and you say, where do you live? And they point to a corner of the gym and go, I live here. You're never going to beat that guy.
Well, that's the thing. I got criticized a few years back for saying the guys in Eastern Europe are going to be the dominant force in boxing. It's what Tim said. In the West, we get spoiled. We make a little bit of money, and we kind of soften up. They have a mental instinct there that no matter how much success they have, they still have this mentally disciplined lifestyle. And that's part of a culture. That's beyond boxing.
Can you think of an American fighter who was in the opportunity that Lomachenko was in to step away from their title and go to their country? That's a different step away from money.
The guy gave up the undisputed lightweight championship of the world.
His dream.
To maybe get killed. That is mental toughness, and we're discussing it in the future for a long time with these Ukrainian fighters. They are outstanding. More to come next time. Thank you so much for joining us here on Deep Waters. We'll see you next time. Enjoy the fights.